The alarm on my wrist buzzed so hard it felt like my bone was vibrating, and I knew before I even looked down that something on Terminal 7 had gone wrong. I was standing on loading Platform 4, hauling a crate of compressed nutrient blocks toward the freight lift, when I heard the scream. Not a human scream. Something higher, sharper, cutting through the hum of the docking bay like a blade through wet paper. I turned around and saw her. A girl, maybe 17 or 18 in human years, though with her kind you could never really tell. Pale blue skin, silver eyes wide with fear, thin robes that were torn at the shoulder. 2 security officers from the Craven Trading Guild had her by the arms, and she was fighting them with everything she had, which wasn't much. She was small, she was terrified, and nobody around her was doing a single thing about it. That was the thing about Terminal 7. Humans worked here. Humans loaded ships, cleaned docking bays, fixed broken conveyor systems, and carried crates until our backs gave out. We were the labor class of the galaxy, the species that showed up late to the party and got handed a broom instead of a seat. And one thing every human on this station had learned fast was this: you do not interfere with alien business. You do not look. You do not ask questions. You keep your head down and you keep your job. I kept walking toward the lift. I told myself it wasn't my problem. I told myself I had rent due in 4 days, and a sister back on Earth who needed her treatment paid for by the end of the month. I told myself 100 things in about 3 seconds, and every single one of them fell apart the moment I heard her voice crack and say one word. Please. Not in her own language, in ours. Broken, but clear enough. Please. I don't remember deciding to move. My legs just did it. I dropped the crate, and it hit the floor hard enough to crack open, nutrient blocks spilling across the platform, and I walked straight toward the 2 Craven guards holding her. They were twice my height. Their skin had that hard, plated look, like armor grown straight out of their bodies. Craven traders were not known for patience, and they were definitely not known for taking orders from humans. I stepped between them and the girl. "Let her go," I said. One of them looked down at me like I was an insect that had wandered onto his boot. "This is not your matter, human. Step aside before you regret it." I didn't step aside. My hands were shaking. My heart was slamming against my ribs so hard I thought it might crack them, but I didn't move. I looked past the guard at the girl, and for just a second, her silver eyes met mine, and I saw something in them that wasn't just fear, it was disbelief. Like she couldn't understand why a stranger, a human, someone with nothing to gain, would stand in front of 2 armed guards for her. I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was my sister's face. Maybe it was every time I had watched someone get pushed around on this station and done nothing, because doing something meant losing everything. Whatever it was, it made me grab the wrist of the guard holding her left arm and pull it off her. Everything after that happened fast. The guard shoved me back so hard I hit a stack of crates and felt the wind punch out of my lungs. Alarms started going off across the platform. More security arrived, this time station security. Humans in gray uniforms who worked for Halden Cross. My supervisor, a broad man with a permanent scowl, who had never liked me much to begin with. By the time the dust settled, the girl had been pulled free from the Craven guards by station officers, who decided, thankfully, that a public disturbance was worse for business than letting her go. She was released. The guards grumbled and stormed off toward their ship. And I was standing there, chest heaving, blood trickling from a cut above my eyebrow, wondering if I had just done something incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Halden Cross answered that question for me within the hour. He called me into his office, which was really just a metal box with a desk and a screen showing shipping schedules. He didn't even let me sit down. "You interfered with a guild transaction," he said. "Do you have any idea what that could cost this station? Do you have any idea what that could cost me?" I tried to explain. I told him she was being hurt, that she was scared, that nobody else was going to help her. He didn't care. He told me humans didn't get to have opinions about alien business, that our entire arrangement with the trading guilds depended on staying invisible, staying useful, and staying quiet. He said I had broken all 3 rules in under a minute. "You're done here," he said. "Clear out your locker. Don't come back." Just like that, 6 years of loading crates on Terminal 7 ended in about 90 seconds. No severance, no warning, just a door closing behind me, and 11 credits left in a coworker's hand, who felt bad enough to slip me something on the way out. I walked out of the docking bay with my jacket over my shoulder, and no idea what I was going to tell my sister. That was when I found her again. She was sitting behind a cargo container near the maintenance corridor, knees pulled up to her chest, still shaking. Alone. Nobody had bothered to check if she was okay after the guards left. Nobody ever did. Not for someone who looked like trouble waiting to happen for anyone associated with her. I almost kept walking. I had every reason to. I had just lost my job because of her. But something about the way she was sitting there, small and lost in a station full of strangers who didn't care whether she lived or starved, made my feet stop again. "Are you hurt?" I asked. She looked up at me, startled, like she hadn't expected me to speak to her again after everything that had happened. She shook her head slowly, then changed her mind and nodded instead, touching her shoulder where the robe had torn. I sat down next to her, keeping some distance so I wouldn't scare her further, and pulled a small med kit out of my bag, the kind every dock worker carried in case of an accident on the platform. I held it up so she could see it wasn't a weapon, then gently cleaned the scrape on her shoulder, while she watched me with those wide silver eyes, tense the entire time, waiting for me to ask for something in return. I didn't ask for anything. When I was done, I reached into my jacket and pulled out the only food I had left, a wrapped nutrient bar I had been saving for later, and handed it to her. She stared at it like she didn't understand the gesture. "It's food," I said. "You look hungry." She took it slowly, unwrapped it, and ate like she hadn't eaten in days. I sat there and watched the station lights flicker above us, my mind spinning with worry about rent, and my sister, and what I was going to do now that I had no job, but somehow, in that moment, none of it felt as heavy as it should have. "What is your name?" she finally asked, her voice careful, like she was testing out unfamiliar words. "Daniel," I said. "Daniel Ashford." She repeated it quietly to herself, like she was memorizing it. Then she told me her name. Sarah. Just that. One word, no last name, no title, nothing else. I didn't push for more. On a station like this, everyone had secrets, and it wasn't my business to dig into hers. We sat there for almost an hour, not saying much, just existing in the same space, while the chaos of the terminal moved around us. At one point, she asked me why I had stepped in to help her, when I knew it could cost me my job. I told her the truth. I told her that some things matter more than a paycheck, and that watching someone get hurt while doing nothing about it was a kind of pain I didn't want to carry around for the rest of my life. She was quiet for a long moment after that. Then, without any warning, a transport arrived on the far side of the platform, and she stood up fast, brushing off her robes, her eyes suddenly sharp and alert in a way I hadn't seen before. She looked at me like she wanted to say something important, but didn't have the time. "I have to go," she said. Before I could respond, she pressed something small and cold into my palm, closed my fingers around it, and turned to run toward the transport. I opened my hand and saw a thin silver ring with strange markings etched into the metal, glowing faintly blue. "Wait," I called after her. "What is this?" She didn't answer. She was already gone, swallowed by the crowd near the transport gate, and within minutes, the ship had sealed its doors and lifted off the platform, disappearing into the traffic lanes above the station. I stood there holding the ring, completely unaware that I had just said goodbye to the most important person I would ever meet. The weeks after that were rough. Word had spread fast that I had lost my job for interfering with a guild matter, and no other company on Terminal 7 wanted to touch me. Every application I sent out came back with the same polite rejection. My savings dried up within 2 weeks. I sold what little I could, skipped meals more than I want to admit, and spent most nights staring at the ceiling of my small rented room, wondering if helping that girl had been the worst decision of my life. I still didn't regret it. That was the strange part. Even broke, even blacklisted, even watching my future crumble one rejection letter at a time, some part of me knew that if the same moment happened again, I would do exactly the same thing. I kept the ring she gave me. I never sold it, even during my worst week, even when a pawn dealer in the lower market offered me enough credits to cover a month of rent. Something about it felt important, like it belonged to a story that wasn't finished yet. 3 weeks after losing my job, everything changed in a single afternoon. I was walking through the main concourse of Terminal 7, trying to find work at the cargo listings board, when the entire station went silent. Every screen flickered at once, switching from shipping schedules to an emergency broadcast notice. People stopped walking. Guards straightened up. Even the loud, constant hum of trade chatter across the terminal dropped to nothing. Outside the massive viewing windows, a ship appeared above the station, and it was unlike anything I had ever seen. It wasn't a trading vessel or a passenger transport. It was long, sleek, layered in dark metal with lights running along its hull in perfect symmetrical patterns, and it was easily 10 times the size of any ship docked at Terminal 7. A hush fell over the crowd as it slowly lowered toward the largest docking platform on the station, one reserved for vessels of the highest importance. An Imperial ship, someone near me whispered, and the fear in their voice was unmistakable. I had heard about Imperial vessels before, mostly in rumors passed between dock workers. They belonged to the ruling authority of the wider empire that governed most of known space, the same empire whose trade agreements decided whether species like mine got treated as partners or as disposable labor. An Imperial ship arriving at a station like ours usually meant one thing: someone had done something very wrong, and punishment was coming. Guild officials scrambled across the platform, adjusting uniforms, straightening papers, whispering frantically to each other. Halden Cross, my old supervisor, pushed through the crowd toward the docking platform with a look of panic on his face that I had never seen before. The ship's doors opened, and a formal procession stepped out. Guards in dark ceremonial armor lined a path, and behind them walked an official dressed in deep violet robes, who raised a device to project a message across the entire terminal, loud enough for every person on the station to hear. "Citizens of Terminal 7, the voice announced. "Weeks ago, a member of the Imperial family traveled through this station undisclosed, observing conditions among the subject species under Imperial protection. During that visit, she was detained and mistreated by representatives of the Craven Trading Guild, and abandoned without aid by station authorities who witnessed the event. This incident has been formally recorded." The crowd around me went completely still. I felt my stomach drop. "One individual on this station," the voice continued, "chose to intervene on her behalf despite having no knowledge of her identity, at personal cost, expecting nothing in return. The Empire wishes to acknowledge this individual publicly." I stood frozen as the violet-robed official turned toward the crowd, scanning faces, and my mind raced back to that day on the platform, the girl with silver eyes, the torn robe, the way she had thanked me with nothing but a small silver ring before disappearing into a transport. It couldn't be, I thought. Then I saw her. She stepped out from behind the line of guards, no longer wearing the torn traveling robes from that day, but formal attire that matched the ceremonial procession around her. Silver eyes just as striking as I remembered, and the moment she saw me standing near the edge of the crowd, her face broke into the first real smile I had ever seen from her. "Daniel," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the silent terminal. Every head in the crowd turned toward me at once, and I felt like the floor had opened up beneath my feet. The official beside her continued speaking, his voice steady and formal. "This is Sarah Adeline Voss, only daughter of Emperor Kale Voss, heir to the imperial throne. She traveled among the subject species incognito to witness firsthand how they are treated within stations under guild authority. The events she experienced on this platform will be reviewed, and appropriate consequences will follow for those responsible." I heard gasps ripple through the crowd. Somewhere behind me, I heard Halden Cross make a small, strangled sound. Sarah walked toward me, and the guards parted to let her through without hesitation. She stopped a few feet away, studying my face like she was making sure I was really there. "You look thinner," she said quietly. "Have you not been eating well?" I laughed, a short, disbelieving sound, because out of everything happening around us, that was the thing she chose to say first. "I lost my job the day I helped you," I admitted. "Nobody on this station would hire me after that." Something shifted in her expression, a flash of anger quickly replaced by calm control befitting someone who had clearly been trained to hold her emotions in check in public. She turned toward the violet-robed official and spoke a few quiet words I couldn't understand, and he nodded immediately, stepping aside to relay orders to the guards. Then, she turned back to me. "I did not know how to find you again, without drawing attention that could put you at further risk," she said. "I feared reaching out too soon might make things worse for you. I am sorry for the time it took." "You don't have to apologize," I said. "You didn't do anything wrong. I made my own choice that day." "You made a choice most people on this station were too afraid to make," she said. Guards ignored me. Officials looked away. "Your own supervisor fired you within the hour for showing basic kindness to a stranger. And still, you did not hesitate." I didn't know what to say to that, so I said nothing, and for a moment, we just stood there while the entire terminal watched in stunned silence. She reached out and gently took my hand, the same hand she had pressed the ring into weeks earlier, and I realized I was still wearing it, the small silver band glowing faintly against my skin. "This ring identifies its bearer as a guest under direct Imperial protection," she explained. "Anyone who threatens or harms you from this point forward answers directly to the Imperial Court. I gave it to you the moment I decided you were someone worth protecting, long before I knew if I would ever see you again." Behind her, the violet-robed official cleared his throat and stepped forward with a formal announcement that echoed across the terminal once more. "By order of the Emperor, all trading privileges held by the Craven Guild on this station are suspended, pending full investigation. Station management under Halden Cross is relieved of authority, effective immediately, pending review of misconduct during this incident. Compensation and formal employment protections will be extended to Daniel Ashford and any human worker who acted with similar courage in defense of those under Imperial protection." I glanced toward Halden Cross, who looked like he might collapse where he stood, his face pale, his mouth opening and closing without any sound coming out. Guards moved toward him calmly but firmly, and I felt no satisfaction in watching it happen, only a strange sense of quiet justice finally settling into place. Sarah turned back to me, still holding my hand. "I did not help you because you were an emperor's daughter," I said quietly, so only she could hear. "I didn't know that. I helped you because you were scared, and nobody else was doing anything." "I know," she said, "and that is exactly why I trust you." She explained, standing there in front of the entire terminal, that she had spent months traveling in disguise through stations across the Empire, checking whether the treatment of subject species matched the reports sent to the throne. Most of what she had witnessed had been quiet cruelty, hidden behind polite paperwork, indifference, dressed up as procedure. Terminal 7 was the first place where a stranger had risked everything without knowing who she was or what it might cost him. "The Empire has grown too comfortable treating certain species as tools rather than people," she said, loud enough for the crowd to hear this time. "What Daniel did reminded me that kindness without calculation still exists in this galaxy, even in places that have forgotten how to value it." She offered me a position within the Imperial Court that day, an advisor role focused on the treatment of subject species across trading stations, a job built entirely around making sure what happened to her never happened to anyone else without consequence. I wasn't a soldier, or a diplomat, or anyone important before that day. I was just a dock worker who couldn't watch someone get hurt without doing something about it. I said yes. Months later, Terminal 7 looks different. The Craven Guild lost its trading rights entirely after the investigation confirmed a long pattern of abuse toward workers and travelers alike. Human employment protections were strengthened across dozens of stations under new imperial policy, not because the Empire suddenly discovered compassion, but because one small act of stubborn kindness forced them to look at something they had been avoiding for a long time. I still wear the ring, not because I need imperial protection anymore, but because it reminds me of the moment before any of this happened, the moment I dropped a crate on a loading platform and walked toward two armed guards without any plan, any backup, or any idea what it would cost me. People sometimes ask me if I would do it again, knowing everything I know now, knowing I would lose my job, my income, and almost my entire future in the span of one afternoon. I always give them the same answer. I would do it before I even finished asking myself if it was worth the risk. Because some things are worth losing everything for. even when you have no idea what you might gain in return.